The Credential Store allows for effortless authorization. Anytime you're communicating with a third party, you'll likely need to keep track of your authorization details. These authorization tokens have an expiration. The Credential Store takes care of the frustrating and low-level code of making sure you always have a valid, active token. They persist themselves as they're refreshed and are recalled on lookup. If a token is about to expire, instead of letting it expire, Perigee will preemptively refresh that token with a brand new one, allowing for seamless third-party integrations. The Credential Store can be used anywhere you have custom logic to refresh a token, credential, password, or even connection string, and provides an easy-to-use SDK to do so. The Credential Store can automatically be plugged into your HTTP requests to authorize those calls on the fly, including automatically refreshing and retrying them on authorization failures. The way most applications work is that you've got several steps in your third-party call. You may already be on step 5 and your authorization fails, causing an exception to be thrown, and now you're back at the beginning of your block, hopeful to make it through another run. With Perigee, we do everything we can to verify step 5 will authorize and attempt a retry, including reauthorizing the token if necessary, so that no interruption in your data critical process occurs. Let's see how easy it is to use the Credential Store. The first step is to register a refresh. You'll see we're registering one called REST-Sharp token, and in that we're returning a brand new REST-Sharp Credential Store item that's using an HTTP basic authenticator. It's going to expire in 3600 seconds. Let's then allocate a new REST client and tell that client to use the authenticator, our credential authenticator pointing to REST-Sharp token. We then create a request to basic auth, and we execute that. Let's run this so we can see the successful path go through. You'll see that we got a 200 response saying that we properly authenticated with Postman Echo. Let's go ahead and stop the application and run it again. With this run, you'll notice what's missing, and that is our log line saying that we're refreshing the API credentials. The reason for that is that it persisted that credential when it was refreshed initially. On this run, we don't need to refresh that credential again because we have a valid credential. On this run, let's go ahead and forcefully invalidate that credential so we can take a look at the retries. To invalidate a credential, it's pretty easy. We just ask the Credential Store to invalidate it. Now when we run this the first time, let's provide the wrong password and set a breakpoint. Now that this application is running, you'll see that we're going to return the wrong password. And if I let this go, you'll notice that it doesn't successfully get through. So here in just a moment, it's going to try again. The reason for that is that Postman Echo returned a 400 response, meaning that our authorization was invalid. So it's going to go ahead and try to refresh that. This time, let's provide the right password here and just hot reload our application. You'll see it gets right on through on the second try because we provided a valid token again. This is incredibly powerful as we didn't exit the scope of our process. Our execute line was able to successfully call out to the API even though it did so twice and with invalid credentials, thanks to the Credential Store. The Credential Store doesn't simply have to just return a value. Here's an example of using a refresh from Microsoft Online. We can generate a redirect URI, can get the refresh token stored from previous calls, can even switch its logic based on whether or not it has a refresh token or a brand new authorization code. This is just one example of how you might use the Credential Store to accomplish a fairly complicated refresh.